Welcome to Espresso Shots. My name is John, and in tonight's episode, I am going to be wearing the jersey that is just behind me there. It is a replica of Dale Howardchuk's jersey when he played for the Cornwall Royals, his number 10 jersey. And it's actually signed by Dale Howardchuk as well. I was fortunate enough to buy it in a silent auction a few years ago, and learned this morning that Dale passed away at the age of 57, which is way too young. Anybody that is a Winnipeg Jets fan will know who Dale Howardchuk is. Anybody that's a hockey fan will probably know who Dale Howardchuk is. And his friends and all the players that are back on the ice playing for your entertainment for the Stanley Cup for 2019/2020. So again, this episode goes out to Dale. We have a great guest, so stick around, and I'll be wearing Dale's jersey tonight.
You're listening to Espresso Shots Live. Tune in every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. for your digital caffeine.
It's a little too on the nose if you ask me. I mean,
No, it's going to be fine, and you look fabulous.
Okay.
Okay, here we go, and action!
And welcome to another shot of Espresso Shots, or another show. Thanks for joining us again. We have a exciting guest lined up for you folks tonight. In the woods, just waiting to come on out and chat with us. What's going on with you folks tonight? What do you have in your cup? I've got myself a cup of 49th Parallel coffee, as always, with a little bit of cream and a touch of local maple syrup in here tonight. That's pretty awesome. And 49 Parallel available at the Cottage Coffee House right there if you're in Westport. So one of the great things about working in a cafe or owning a cafe is you have an opportunity to meet so many people. People that come in and hear their stories. And it's really one of the inspirations behind Espresso Shots is all these people that I meet with great stories to tell. And just great people. And so one of the people that I met a few years ago, actually I met him probably before, but then I really met him from an email. I got an email from a gentleman named Brian Lindsay, and he said, "Hey, I'm writing a book, a murder mystery book that surrounds the Westport area, and we'd like to use cottage coffee in part of it." And I said, "Well, as long as nobody's getting killed in the murder mystery at my cafe, I think that's pretty cool." So anyway, that's how I met Brian, and Brian is with us tonight. So I'm going to bring Brian on. We're going to chat a little bit with Brian and see what Brian's been up to these days. So welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. How's life out in Kitchener, Ontario?
It's pretty good right at the moment. I've been busy cleaning, doing my yard work and making some jams and jellies and pickles and keeping out of trouble, basically.
Well,
working on my new book.
Well, next time you're in Westport, I know you're going to be here in 2 weeks' time. I wouldn't mind some pickles.
I think I can probably manage that.
All right, so I had a few questions lined up for you, Brian.
Okay.
I've answered the first one already. So I know you're from Kitchener, Ontario. Born and raised in Kitchener, or what's your story, Brian?
Born and raised in Toronto. I lived for 10 years in Calgary and been in Kitchener for the last little over 30 years.
And what brought you to Westport, Ontario? I mean, is it just because it's such a great place, or?
Well, partly it's because it's such a good place, but my wife's family, both sides of her family, are from the Perth and Smiths Falls area, and we have a lot of family in that area, a couple of whom ran a boat on the Rideau system for a number of years. So my wife and kids and I spent a few summers, boating and cottaging with them, and I got to know the the river a little bit, the little towns and villages along it. So when I was looking for a place to set the book that I was starting to write, I did some research and ended up picking Westport, which from my perspective was it had a small town feel, but it was big enough that I could stick in some extra stuff without it being too ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about Westport. It is a small town with a lot of old town charm, but yet there's so many amenities here and there's so many different settings, and it's probably the perfect place to create a novel around. So let's talk a bit about the novel. And I know you've written 3 books, and I think maybe you're working on the 4th. Is that right?
Yes, book 4 is pretty much finished. COVID has played games with the timeline for getting that book out, but it looks like things are loosening up now. So I have some expectation that it will be published fairly soon. So soon there will be 4.
Nice. So the first book is called, let me get it in the screen, Old Bones. And
Right.
it's about 5 years old. That's about 5 years ago. You wrote that 2015-ish?
Yes.
So
Yep, that's when it was published. Yes.
so after that, and it really, maybe you could talk a bit about the book itself, and the Gilmore. They're called the Gilmore House Mysteries, and they all kind of rotate around the Gilmore House. Can you talk a bit about kind of where that comes from, or what that's?
I wanted a place that was relatively unique, so I created a fictional inn on a fictional island, and I dumped it in Upper Rideau Lake near Westport. And so all of my the primary action takes place on the island, and of course in Westport a little bit.
So book 1 I've read, and I've not read the second or third, so I've got some work ahead of me. So talk about the other 2 books that kind of follow it. I know one is kind of, I think one. Well, you can talk about them, Brian. The second and third book.
The second book is called Flight Plan, and it has, being a sequel, it has the same base group of characters, the same location, and a whole new set of secondary characters and new and dangerous groups of people coming to the island to give the owner and operator a hard time.
Nice.
The
And
third
then-
one, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Brian.
The third one is called Backstory, and I had some requests from people to know more about RJ, the primary character of the stories, about his background. So I decided to tell people about it. So I wrote one that gave a lot of the background of the character. So and a current mystery at the same time.
Now, are you allowed to tell us the name of the 4th book?
The 4th book is called Sterner Days.
And so is it going back, or is it flashing back, or is it?
Nope.
No, it's
Nope, this is current again. So it's just a new bunch of bad people doing things in Gilmore Island and Westport.
So I'm gonna slide over here. So this is some graphic work, and I think you told me a few years back that your son or your son-in-law helped with the artwork for the books themselves.
This particular piece of work is done by my cousin,
Okay.
who lives in Calgary. So this is the main piece of artwork that designates my company, the business that I run, BR Lindsay Imagist, and my son-in-law does the cover art for the novels.
Right. So I'll just kind
And
of
then I have
hold that guy right up there in case somebody is not familiar with it. So all the artwork that's on the front pages is done by by
Right.
your son. Yeah.
my son-in-law. Yeah,
Your son-in-law, yes. Because Brian, you have
Right.
2 children, right? A daughter and a son, or
yes, That's correct. Yes.
it's been a while since we've chatted, so I got to get
Yes.
caught up again.
Yeah, right.
So I also know that so you sell your books locally at Kadrinko's here in Westport, and you do have a website as well. And on that website, it lists as well 5 or 6 different locations where people can buy your books. Can you just rhyme those off for me if you can recall them all, Brian?
Yes, okay. I have the Book Nook in Perth. I sell them at a local bookstore here, um, the name of which now is, of course, escaped me.
Wordsworth books.
Wordsworth Books. Um, and a book. It's also for sale in a bookstore in Ottawa, which the name of which I also can't remember.
Nice. So if
Books on-
people
Books on Books on Broad Street is where it
No.
is.
books on Broad Street, nice.
No.
That was a surprise question, Brian.
Yes, it was. Yeah, you got me.
I figured I had to get you at some point. But
Yes, right.
if people do want to buy your books, you are going to be in Westport at the Westport
sorry.
Market coming
Sorry,
up.
I have to correct myself. It wasn't Books on Broad Street. It's Books on Beechwood in Ottawa.
Butch Books on Beechwood. Thank you, Brian.
Beechwood. Okay, sorry. Carry on with your question.
No problem. So I was going to say that you are going to be at the Westport Market on not this weekend coming up, but the weekend prior to Labor Day weekend, Saturday, and then right? Is it the
Yes,
what are the
that's
what are
correct,
the what are the dates on that,
August
Brian?
20, August the 29th, and then again September 5th.
So you'll be there with all three of your books for sale.
I will, yes. Yeah.
Have
And I'd like to invite anybody who already has books to bring them along. If they want to get them signed, I'd be happy to do that while I'm there.
nice. Brian, you're always gracious. I know when I first met you, I invited you to the Cottage Coffee House to do a book reading, and I know you were nervous as all get out. But you
You
did
bet
it.
it was.
You did it, and I forget which chapter you read, but it might have been the part where cottage coffee was mentioned in that part of the book. And I always get a
Right.
kick out of seeing my name in writing, so it's kind of cool. And I think the character's name was Bernie, that owned the cafe.
Right, yep.
And we went on a couple years later, Brian, to create a cartoon series called Bernie and Biscuits, where Bernie was
Right.
the owner and Biscuits was the dog, and we had some cartoon fun with that. And that was all inspired out of your book, Brian.
Right. That's nice to hear. I was sorry to see Bernie and Biscuits disappear. So maybe
Yes.
they'll come back someday in a
They
in a new location, perhaps.
they might maybe they'll end up in a book.
There you go. Yeah, you'll have to do a few more.
So I gotta ask you, as a writer, Brian, do you constantly kind of have ideas popping in and out of your head, and or how does that process work when you decide, okay, I'm gonna write a fourth book or I'm gonna write the third book? How does that look? How is that?
Um, I think partly it stems from previous books. I get ideas while I'm writing book two, for instance, that aren't going to work in book two. I put them on paper and file them away, so I have something in the cupboard for book three or book four. Um, and yes, I do get ideas all the time, and sometimes I'm in a position to be able to write them down, and sometimes I'm not, and they disappear. But so that yeah, it's an ongoing process. It's just
And
something
how
that kind of floats around.
and how long, Brian, does it take typically from conception to completion of a book? Like, how is it about a year or longer, or does it depend?
Oh yeah, Old Bones took close to 12 years to put together.
Wow.
Because I was working full time and having family responsibilities and whatnot. I didn't have a lot of time for writing at that point, and there wasn't any real sense of urgency to get it done. So it just kind of drifted along for a number of years, and then I attended a writing workshop and got some ideas and some inspiration, not some inspiration exactly, but some how-to knowledge. And so it came together fairly quickly in the end. So then flight plan and backstory each took a year or a little more after that. only because I already knew the characters, I knew the location. All I really had to do, all I had to do, was create a new story.
Sounds simple enough.
Yeah, in principle, it is very simple. Yes, right.
I've sat down and tried to write a book, and I get the first sentence out. I got the idea in my head, and that's about as far as I get.
Hmm.
It's a
Some
lot. It's a
some
lot of
days,
work.
some days and weeks are like that for me as well. I start something, and then all of a sudden it's gone. There's nothing happening, and then hopefully it comes back.
Right. Well, I'm going to cut out and do a quick weather report from Sunday. I'm going to come back and chat with you, Brian. So let's just do the weather here, so
Okay.
people know what to expect in the Rideau Lakes this weekend with our weather forecast.
I turned my gaze from the lake and looked at. Oh, good Wednesday evening! I'm Chief Meteorologist Happy McSunny, and I'm reporting to you live from Westport in the Rideau Lakes area. The weather for the next couple of days is going to be in the mid-20s, but by the weekend we're going to be back up to 28 and sun, sun, sun. So if you're looking for something to do in the sun as you're sitting at the lake, read one of these Gilmore House Mysteries by Brian Lindsay. Back to you in the studio, John.
Well, thank you very much, Happy McSunny. Great weather forecast as always. Have you seen Happy McSunny before?
No, I've never seen Happy McSunny before. It's quite the weather person.
I have a friend of mine who lives in Ottawa. His name is Jeff. If you're watching tonight, hey Jeff, sent me an email last night. And Jeff has some sight issues, so he doesn't see very well, but he sees pretty well and he operates very well. So he sent me a message last night saying, "Who is your meteorologist? Because I know Ian Black from CBC, and maybe they'd be interested in interviewing the young lad to help him out to get him on his way." So I said, "Jeff," I said, "that's my wife." Well, I can't say who it is, but it's somebody else. But Jeff goes, "Well, maybe we'll ask Ian Black if he'll watch your show tonight." So if for some strange reason that Jeff was able to get Ian Black from CBC to watch Espresso Shots tonight, hi Ian Black. And yes, the meteorologist would love to come on CBC. It would be great.
Uh-huh. I'm sure that would prove to be very interesting.
So Brian, so any closing thoughts on your book? Anything else you want to say to people? I know one thing I forgot to mention is the books are also chocked full of recipes. So it's a combination of your culinary background and your
Right.
creative side that kind of come together in these books. And we've made the cookies in Old Bones, and they're great.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I spent 10 years operating a personal chef service, and I've cooked all my life pretty much. So I've collected, hundreds and hundreds of recipes. So when I was getting started writing this series, I decided that the primary character had to be a cook so that I could involve food in the stories and then put the recipes in the backs of the book. So each time I seem to be putting more recipes in. And actually, I should also mention that there is a recipe book in the works as well. It will carry the fiction a little further, so it'll be a Gilmore House recipe book, and I hope to have it out in the next year.
Brian, what a brilliant way to tie all your skills together in these books. And like I said, I've only read the first one. I'm not a big reader, but I'm going to make sure I get around to reading the rest of these books. It's on my bucket list for this winter to get into number 2 and number 3, and then in number 4. Congratulations, Brian, on all the work. And I know a lot of people in the Westport area have read this book, and I hear lots of people talk about it, and I see it at Kadrinko's when I go in there for sale. And it's just great, Brian, that you promote this area with your writing, and it's just fantastic, Brian.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. I really like the Westport area. I think it's a beautiful area. I've been there summer and winter, and I'm happy to promote it.
Nice. Well, if you have nothing else to say, Mr. Brian, I'll let you go back to your evening, and you can enjoy your water. You're having water tonight instead of coffee. It's kind of late for coffee, but I'm a diehard.
Yeah, right. Cheers.
Cheers, Brian. Thanks again. We'll see you. What's the date again in the Westport market?
August the 29th and September the 5th. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody.
Yes, pop on into the Cottage Coffee House. We'll catch up a little bit if I can't make it to the market.
I will
'cause
do that.
Might be working. Thanks again, Brian.
I will do that. Okay. Have a good evening.
You as well.
Bye.
Well, there you have it. What a great guest, Brian. Brian Lindsay. And if you haven't had a chance to read his books or look at his books, and you're in the Rideau Lakes area, stop into the Westport Market. The Westport Market is only operated for about 4 or 5 weeks. They had a really slow start with COVID-19, but they're up and running, and they do have some great vendors there. And the people that go to the markets, I mean, you got to give them a thumbs up too. They work so hard to put these crafts together for people, and then they have to go in front of their audience and try to sell their crafts or talk about their crafts as well. So if you've not been to the Westport Market, make sure you go. And shout out to Paul and Tracy if they're watching tonight. Paul and Tracy, more so Paul, look after the Westport Market. It's their project, and it's in year 2. And it's growing. So anyway, that concludes tonight's episode. Make sure you tune in next week. I have Trevor Connell, the brains behind What's on Westport, to talk about how the summer has gone, what kind of events have gone on, and what kind of events are coming up. And if you're not familiar with What's on Westport, check out that website. It's a great location to find out all the ins and outs about Westport and the Rideau Lake. So have a good night, folks. Cheers, peace, love, and coffee. And again, oh yes, I wanted to mention Dale Howard-Chuck. I bought this jersey at a silent auction, and as part of the purchase, I got to go to a hockey game with Rick Smith from the Boston Bruins in the Ottawa Coliseum. We watched Boston and Ottawa play with Rick. One of the highlights of my year, and this jersey came along with the deal. So sorry to hear that Dale passed away at the age of 57, way too young for anyone to pass away at, especially a great player like Dale. Buffalo Sabres was actually and still is one of my favorite hockey teams, along with the Winnipeg Jets. So anyway, my heart goes out to Dale Howard-Chuck tonight and his family. We'll see you all next week.